Good morning and happy Easter. Welcome to the All Together podcast, your love first connection, anytime, anywhere. Today.Church is meeting for Sunday morning house church at 10 a.m., and this podcast is to help you stay connected if you can't be there all together. Today.Church is anytime, anywhere, Jesus people gather, love first. Now, this is Easter Sunday, Resurrection Sunday, and we're going to be talking about you are not alone because the resurrection changes everything. But before we get into that, I would really appreciate your prayers this morning for my wife, Tangi. She is in the hospital, had knee replacement surgery on Friday and has been dealing with some complications, and this morning has an allergic reaction to some of the medication, so I'll be heading back up there shortly. But really appreciate your prayers and all of the support and just believing for good things. You are not alone. That's what the resurrection proves. The vision verse for today is from Isaiah 41, verse 10. I'll be reading from the NET translation, where it says, "Do not be afraid, for I am with you. Don't be frightened, for I am your God. I strengthen you. Yes, I help you. Yes, I uphold you with my saving right hand." Now we know that Jesus is seated at the right hand of the Father, according to Scripture. And so I believe that this verse is also speaking to what the resurrection means, because of what Jesus did, we don't have to be afraid. Jesus said that he is with us. We don't have to be frightened because God has provided all that we need. He strengthens you. He helps you. And yes, you are upheld with his saving right hand, which Jesus is the perfect example of that. As a kid, I was always told that at the crucifixion, which of course led up to the resurrection, that because of the sin of the world, that God the Father could not look upon that sin, and so actually he turned his face away from Jesus as he struggled and died on the cross. Now, because of that, sometimes we get this impression that when we are far from God, when we are away from him, that God can't even really see us, or maybe even he has forgotten us. But today, I want to look at some of the details of what actually happened, and realizing that God is with you, no matter where you are in life, no matter if you feel like God has forgotten you. The resurrection and what Jesus did and what God showed his love to the world by the resurrection, it proves that this changes everything, and you are not alone. Let's read from Matthew 27, verse 45 and 46. And this is as Jesus was being crucified. "Now from noon until 3 in the afternoon, darkness came over all the land. About 3 o'clock, Jesus shouted with a loud voice, 'Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani?' That is, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Now that is a phrase in Aramaic. Another translation of that phrase, well, actually, we'll get to that in a minute. But the Aramaic that Jesus spoke there, the soldiers and those around didn't quite understand. They thought, because he was saying Eloi, that he was calling for Elisha. And then they tried to give him something to drink. And we're not going to go into all that detail of this story. But because of this, sometimes we're told that God actually turned his face from Jesus because Jesus felt forsaken in that moment. And we have to understand that the brokenness of this world was laid upon Jesus. He suffered the consequences of our sin, the consequences of a brutal and cruel world that actually executed and killed him in the most brutal way. And Jesus, when he cried out here, he is quoting from Psalm 22, where David writes, my God, why have you abandoned me? I groan in prayer, but help seems far away. Now, we need to understand that from a Jewish perspective, a rabbi in those days many times would quote one part of a verse, but actually be implying the whole chapter or a whole statement. And this entire psalm, Psalm 22, has prophetic references throughout it about the crucifixion. And it's important to understand that Jesus was crying out, my God, why have you abandoned me? I groan, but help seems far away. Okay? Now let's look at some of the other prophecies in this chapter that apply to the crucifixion. Verse 14, it says, my strength drains away like water. All my bones are dislocated. My heart is like wax. It melts away inside of me. Verse 15, the roof of my mouth is as dry as a piece of pottery. My tongue sticks to my gums. You set me in the dust of death. And we have Jesus crying out, I thirst. And this is a symbol of the resurrection. Verse 16, yes, wild dogs surround me. A gang of evil men crowd around me. Like a lion, they pin my hands and feet. I can count all my bones. My enemies are gloating over me in triumph. This is just an incredible prophetic picture of what happened on the cross. And it goes on. Verse 18, they are dividing up my clothes among themselves. Excuse me. They are rolling dice for my garments. But you, O Lord, listen to this. You, O Lord, do not remain far away. You are my source of strength. Hurry and help me. Now, Psalm 22, Jesus quoted, my God, why have you forsaken me? It seemed to him that God was so far away from him. But as they were dividing up his clothes and rolling dice for his garments, the psalmist says, but you, O Lord, do not remain far away. In fact, let's look at another translation of this that actually goes into a little bit more of a detail or literal translation of the Hebrew. Psalm 22:24 in the New King James Version says, for he has not despised nor abhorred the affliction of the afflicted, nor has he hidden his face from him. But when he cried to him, he heard. Now, this puts an entirely different picture on the crucifixion and on Easter in general. This wasn't a time when the Father turned his face away from the Son. You see, in fact, John 3:16 says, God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that through him, the Son, or we might be saved. And this salvation process, God the Father was a part of that. His incredible love for the world was on display as he allowed this brutality to happen to his one and only Son. And even though Jesus, with the consequences of sin and the pain and suffering that his humanity was enduring, even though he felt isolated, he felt alone, he felt rejected, he felt everything that we feel, and he cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me? God the Father did not turn away from him. He did not hide his face from him. His love allowed this self-sacrifice to be the perfect example for us of what God's love is really like. So no matter where you are in life, you may feel like God has forsaken you. You may feel like that you are abandoned. You may feel like that your dreams are dead and you are living in a tomb of brokenness. But no matter where you are, God has not forsaken you. He has not given up on you. He does not despise your affliction. No, he has not hidden his face from you. And if you cry to him, he hears you. You see, the cross is not a symbol of God's wrath. It is a symbol of God's love. And if we understand what Jesus said, he said, if you have seen me, you have seen the Father. If we want to understand the Father's love, we need to look to Jesus. And as Jesus was suffering and dying on the cross, he showed even more of an example of what God's love is really like. Remember, we just read about the prophetic instance of them gambling over his clothes. And let's look at where that really happened in Luke 22:32 through 34. 2 other criminals were also led away to be executed with him. So when they came to the place that is called the Skull, they crucified him there, along with the criminals, one on his right and one on his left. And that was prophesied about also. Verse 34. But Jesus said to them, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they are doing. Then they threw dice to divide his clothes. Here's Jesus suffering the consequences of all of our sin, all of the brokenness in the world. We're told that he feels everything that we have felt, that he struggled with everything that we have struggled with. And in this moment of cruelty, the one who had the power and the authority to call 10,000 angels to rescue him, instead of seeking rescue, he sought redemption. Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they are doing. No matter where you are, no matter what you have done, the resurrection is proof that Jesus died to give you new life, to give you eternal and abundant life, both here and now in this world and in the world to come. You are not alone. The resurrection changes everything. The Father has not hidden his face from you. He loves you so much that he gave his one and only Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. You see, the resurrection changes everything. It is proof that you are not alone. And our command verse today, the end of the Great Commission, go and make disciples, Jesus said in Matthew 28:20, the last of that verse, he said, and remember, I am with you always to the end of the age. That is what we celebrate on this resurrection day. And no matter where you are not alone. Thank you so much for joining us for this All Together podcast, your Love First connection, anytime, anywhere. And remember, follow Jesus today. Love first.